Welcome everybody to our Fireside Chat today. My name is Abhishek Koshikar. I'm a junior. I'm going to be a junior next year at Leland High School in California. I'm also a Kyros student, and today our industry leader is Anurag Gupta, who is the founder and CEO of Shoreline. And he has previous experience as the VP of Database and Analytics at Amazon Web Services. He's a founder of Interlace Systems. He was the director of engineering at Trading Dynamics, an architect at Arbor Software, a technical staff at Oracle, and he has a Bachelor of Science from Carnegie Mellon University. Anurag, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
It's exactly what you just said. So I've been in industry for quite a while now, and when mostly startups, but after I finished my bachelor's, I thought, I was just looking for a job. I ended up at Oracle. That ended up being a pretty fantastic opportunity for me because even though Oracle had crossed $1 billion in revenue, the team that was responsible for their database, which was their flagship, their flagship product, was just 20 people. And so there was a chance to do a lot of work and go both broad and deep and really learn the trade. And then since then, I basically went to successively smaller startups. First one was 80 people when I joined. The next one was 12 people when I joined. And then I co-founded a couple. In between, I was part of Amazon Web Services, which is part of Amazon and does cloud computing. And we can talk a little bit about that when we get to the two use cases I described for you. Right now, for the last 2.5 years, I've been an entrepreneur starting Shoreline, which is a DevOps company. We help people manage, keep their systems up efficiently.
So at Amazon, it seems like you had a pretty lofty goal of trying to compete with Oracle. So how did you approach that goal? Did you break it up into smaller steps?
Yeah. So that's one part of it, breaking it into steps. The other part of it is, so you want to be in a big space. So check, we're in a big space, right? With Redshift and Aurora. The next thing is you want to figure out what you can do differently, because you're not going to be able to compete with somebody who's got a head start simply by running faster, right? They've got a 30-year head start. They've got hundreds of thousands of customers. It's very difficult to compete with that. So what you want to figure, the joking sort of way I put it was, it doesn't matter if someone has a 30-year head start as long as they're running in the wrong direction, right? And so the question then becomes, okay, so I want to build something like that's a database, but I want to find somebody who isn't using them and look for what they need. And so that's really the cause. And then if you look at Redshift, one of the interesting things about Redshift or about data warehousing at that time was enterprise storage was growing a lot faster than data warehousing. And so that was just a weird thing, right? Because why are you storing data and not analyzing it, right? And so that means that there has to be a cost that's vastly different, or maintaining the system is really hard, or or it's become slower and slower as you put more data in. So all of those three things happen to be true in data warehousing. And so one of the things we did in Redshift is that the list cost for data warehouse was $100,000 per terabyte, and we came out at 1,000. And so, people used to, they give big discounts in enterprise software. So instead of 100,000, they may have been paying 10,000 or 20,000. But, it's one of those things that you learn, for example, in game theory, which is if you're sort of the crazy guy who's doing something that they can't possibly approach, then they're not even going to bother trying to compete with you. And so the question was, how can I build something that is, you know, both much, much less expensive, but also for the particular community that I'm trying to reach out to, much, much better. And so, you know, if you're just better along one axis and you're worse across a bunch of them, you're not going to be successful. If you're both, we went out and we said, look, we're 10x faster, 10x cheaper. That's a hard thing to compete against. And so, you know, we were doing pretty well at that.
Wow, that seems like a really, really, like you said, it's really hard to compete against something that's 10 times faster and cheaper. So can you walk us through a little bit how you were able to achieve that?
Sure. So, I mean, one thing comes to a notion of the business model. So people like Oracle and so forth, you know, others in enterprise software, a lot of their costs come from basically having a big sales force and so forth, their marketing and so forth. So their cost of sale is really high. My entire cost is about a tenth of their cost of sale. So it's going to be hard for them to rebuild to compete with us. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, here's how I would describe it. I mean, without getting into the technical details of Oracle per se, you know, Oracle's kind of like a fancy espresso machine. So, you know, you go into the store, you're buying it, you know, for, let's say, your 10th anniversary, and people are saying, and, you know, it's like $10,000, which is expensive, right? But it looks beautiful. It makes a great cup of coffee. But when it's going to be that expensive, you're going to look and compare lots of different machines. You're going to read specs. You can, you know, you're going to do a lot of things. We're not like that. We're not an espresso machine. What we are is closer to is Starbucks. You come in, you buy a coffee by the cup. You don't want it, like coffee the next day, you don't get it. And you know, over time, there's a much, much, much bigger market for coffee by the cup than there is for a $10,000 espresso machine. And by the way, behind the counter, there's a $10,000 espresso machine at Starbucks. And there's a barista who makes 1,000 cups a day, a lot better than you're going to do at home. I don't know if you're a coffee expert, maybe you are. But, you know, so, you know, what you're basically selling is, you know, convenience, you know, and that's the basic idea here. How do I make something easy to buy rather than easy to sell, if you get the distinction, right? Starbucks isn't going out there marketing, drink coffee, it's delicious, right? They just they blanket the earth with their stores and they make it easy to get a coffee whenever you want one. So that's closer to, you know, the cloud computing model. And so, you know, if you make it, and, you know, once you're at that point, you know, you probably don't know the difference in price between Pete's and Starbucks, right? You know, maybe one's, you know, $2.25, the other's $2.40. Who cares, right? It's by the cup, you don't care.
I see. So that's a really interesting way to kind of strategize, knowing your market, knowing your customers. So now let's talk a little bit about the other use case, which is Aurora. So can you explain a little bit about this?
So Aurora, you know, just as Redshift competed in data warehousing, which is analyzing your data, Aurora competed in basically the problem of creating your data. Most applications that you use, underneath them is a relational database that, you know, basically stores and makes sure that your data is available and so forth. It's a really big space. A lot of open source companies, a lot of large companies in it. Oracle, again, is one of the largest. Now, it's harder to say that this one's disruptable because there's really good open source alternatives, which are, you know, free, right? And the other problem is this is really important tech. No one wants a new database. It might be 4% of their overall costs. So reducing that to, let's say 0.4%, no one cares. The main thing you're selling is it's fast enough that your machine, your application won't go down even if there's a surge in demand. And, it's available enough that it's, you're not going to worry about it. But there are issues. So commercial databases like Oracle, Microsoft, IBM are both expensive and they're complicated. The open source ones are both slow and they're unreliable. And so, again, here we came out with something that was a lot less complex than the commercial database, also, of course, a lot less expensive, and then also a lot faster. So what we did is that we said, hey, I'm going to make something that's compatible with MySQL and Postgres, which are the two main open source databases out there, but they're going to be 5 times faster and a ton more available. And so, it's like commercial grade at an open source price. And so that was the pull there. And, internally, I used to talk about, it sometimes helps to create these like mental pictures in just a few words as your North Star. So I said, look, when we start out, we're going to be cheaper than Oracle and better than MySQL. When we finish, we're going to be cheaper than MySQL and better than Oracle. So go from like, look, there's this small area in between these two that we take, and then eventually we cover the entirety of the ground and are better. Better than one, cheaper than the other. And it's hard to be cheaper than free, but there are a lot of different ways you can do it in terms of like, for example, using resources more efficiently. It's hard to be better than something that has a 30-year head start, but they don't have a 30-year head start in the cloud. And so you can apply cloud technologies to, reimagine what a database looks like. So, I'm trying to, again, stay away from tech details, but that mattered a great deal. Like Aurora's probably been out, what, I would guess, 6 years now. It's probably a $2 billion business.
Wow.
And 2 billion, and you're selling databases at 10 cents an hour on average. You have to sell a lot of databases in order to do that. It's kind of like, that's why like coffee by the cup is a decent analogy.
Right. Really impressive stuff. And it's really fascinating too. And I know a lot of people who are listening now are probably going to want to go to this, this type of industry. And most of us are high school students who are looking to apply to colleges. Yep. So if people are looking to do internships at these types of companies, what are things that you're looking for in new interns?
Let me first answer the question of what I look for in any employee for a startup. Okay. So because that'll be perhaps helpful as you think about your long-term career. So I'll give you the analogy of the Wizard of Oz, which maybe you've seen a long time ago, right? So in the Wizard of Oz, so what I look for is brains, heart, and courage. So somebody needs to be smart, right? We're all looking for people who are smart because finally, what software is distilled thought. So the more thought you have, the better, more likely you're going to be able to build something. Heart, you want somebody who just sits there and works and is willing to carry the rest of the team on their back. That's important in a startup in a way that it's not as important at a big company. And the last one, courage, is really about, if you're in an early stage startup, it's it's a difficult job. There are 100 people who are going to say no to you for every one that says yes. You kind of have to pick yourself up and believe, despite the fact that no one else is believing, and you don't even necessarily know what you're doing, right? There's a real lack of clarity in the early going, and you just have to believe that you're going to find an answer, and if you can't believe in yourself, you're going to believe in the team around you. If you can't believe in the team around you, you're going to believe that you're going to find someone who can solve this problem in the future. So, there's a lot of just raw courage there. What I look for in interns is, the courage part isn't as important, right? But I think it is important that they be smart and they be, hardworking. As basic traits. I look for people who I could, bring on over time as, in my, as employees, right? In some sense, an internship is a way to both give back as well as a way for us to explore somebody's fit over a long period of time, right? And so that's the basic idea, if it makes sense. I think there's a question in the chat, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to go to those questions later in the Q&A section. So talking about sort of what you look for in these high school interns, is there any piece of advice that you would give a high schooler who's looking to start perhaps a career in the tech industry?
Whatever career choice you make, you're probably making over the long run. And so, what's valuable over time is specialization, not general skills. So in high school, you've got this GPA across a bunch of different, fields you're taking, English, history, math, science, whatever. And you kind of have to be good across all of them, right? As you get to college, now you suddenly have to be good in your major, and so it's narrowing. When you get to an individual job, you have to be good in that area. As you advance along your career, you have to be yet better and more specialized in some sense.